Shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Coalition is the proud architect of AUKUS, a landmark national security agreement that will make Australia safer, stronger and more secure. The Coalition cabinet I served in delivered AUKUS because we understand the US is our most important ally. 261 days ago, the American people elected a new president. In that time, more than 30 world leaders have met with the US president. Why has the Australian Prime Minister failed to meet with the US president?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for the question. Last time I looked, just to have a bit of fact check, AUKUS wasn't actually delivered during the former government. The concept, to give credit where credit's due, did come from the Morrison government, but the AUKUS agreement was signed by myself, President Biden and Prime Minister Sunak in San Diego. That is just a fact, Mr Speaker. Now, the US President was elected and took office in January. Since then, we have had 3 conversations. I also make the point that there is no country, including the announcement today of an arrangement with Japan and the United States, in which the previous tariff level of 25% across the board has been reduced to 15%, is still higher than the tariff rate of 10% which Australia has. And that Australia has a lower TAFE rate, or equal to every other country on earth. Australia used to, on a bipartisan basis, support free and fair trade, both sides. I find it extraordinary that the Coalition seem to have made a decision by the US administration to, contrary to our free trade agreement with the United States, apply an across-the-board tariff on Australian exports into the United States, has brought with it not a criticism of the issue of the imposition of tariffs, but a criticism, rather than choosing to support Australia, has chosen the opposite.
Order. Order. When the House comes to order. The member for Fisher, I just asked the House to come to order, and I'm about to call the next questioner. Trust me, this is not the time to interject. I'd like to hear from the honourable member for Leichhardt.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to help Australian workers, and what has been the response to our commitment to help Australian workers earn more and keep more of what they earn?
Give the call to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Leichhardt for that question. And it was wonderful to visit with him, workers in Cairns, just last week, talking about how important fair wages and conditions are. Of course, in our first term, our government has delivered landmark legislation when it comes to industrial relations, with a clear goal of getting wages moving again. Now, building on this today, I've introduced legislation to protect penalty rates and overtime rates of 2.6 million workers in this country. We know that right now the modern award safety net can be undermined. Some employers have already had applications on foot to trade away penalty rates of low-paid workers, and of course that would leave some workers worse off. Penalty rates and overtime rates matter. They compensate people for working irregular hours and are an essential feature of many workers' take-home pay. Now, I've been asked about what has the response been to this very important legislation and our commitment to protect penalty rates. Well, I met with Leanne, a retail worker, on Saturday. Penalty rates for her make up about $7,500 per year in her pay packet. When Leanne gets home from her late shifts, her partner is already in bed, and she told me it can be really isolating. That's why penalty rates matter to Leanne. They allow her to earn more and keep more of what she earns being compensated for her late-night work. Now, for workers like Daniel, when speaking about what life would be like if he didn't have penalty rates, he said, "I'd have to work more, see my family less, see my dog less, see my friends less. Just not go to the movies, not even have a holiday." It's for workers like Leanne and Daniel we made a clear election promise that we would legislate to protect penalty rates. And this promise was clearly endorsed by the Australian people. This plan was endorsed by the Australian people. And while Daniel and Leanne back our plan to protect penalty rates, it is disappointing that the Coalition is not making their position clear. They seem to be having a bob each way, on one hand supporting Australian workers, on the other hand talking Australian workers down. While the Coalition dither around on whether or not they'll back Australian workers, it is this Labor government that's getting on with the job of delivering our commitment to protect people's pay, ensuring people earn more and keep more of what they earn here in Australia.
Give a call to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The United States is our closest ally, and 261 days ago they elected a new president. Over that period, the Prime Minister has spent more time making excuses for unacceptable live firing exercises off Australia's coast than he has spent in person with the US President. Following the Prime Minister's recent overseas travels, has he had a conversation with the US President?
Order. The Minister for Infrastructure is getting close to being warned. We cannot have people interjecting during questions. It works both ways. The Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Members of this parliament have a choice sometimes of whether they will back Australia or seek to undermine Australia. A very simple proposition. A very simple proposition.
Order. The Leader of the Nationals and the member for Page.
Those opposite have chosen, rather than support a position which they did in government, to be fair, supporting free trade, including the free trade agreement with the United States, including, might I add, the free trade agreement that they signed up to with China as well. Those opposite have chosen to, rather than put the case, along with members of the government, that tariffs are a cause of economic self-harm by the United States, and that those countries that impose tariffs are imposing a cost on the purchases of goods and services. In this case, they are putting, the United States is putting a cost on goods being exported from Australia into the United States.
Order. Members on my left are going to cease interjecting immediately. It's not a rolling commentary. Honestly. It's a serious question, and the Prime Minister is answering it. It deserves the respect as was shown to the Deputy Leader, to the Leader of the Opposition. My apologies.
And the question they might like to ask themselves is which country has got a better arrangement than 10%? Which country? Because the answer to that, is none. Is none. And what they do, because people do watch what is going on, the debate within our country is watched outside our country. And in most other countries, what we are seeing, in the UK for example, is that both sides of politics are putting the national interest first and arguing the case for their nation. We'll continue to put the case, but we'll also, as I have to President Trump, but we will also do so in the full recognition that the America First policy and ideology, which has been promoted by the Trump administration, is clear. He regards, to quote President Trump, tariffs as the most beautiful word in the English language. We have a very different position and will continue to put it.
Order. Order. The House is going to come to order. The member for Wright. Member for Spence won't be here to hear the question if he continues. We call to the member for Bonner.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, how is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to protect wages and help Australians to earn more and keep more of what they earn?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Bonner for her question, and it was a pleasure to spend so much time with the member for Bonner in the lead-up to the May 3 election, where I saw how connected she was with her local community there in the suburbs of Brisbane. And many of those constituents will, of course, be people who depend upon penalty rates for their standard of living and their quality of life, which is why today the Minister introduced legislation to enshrine penalty rates into law, protecting weekend and overtime pay for around 2.6 million Australians, because we want Australians to earn more and to keep more of what they earn. If you're giving up your weekend, our government will make sure that you get paid the penalty rates that you deserve. And it's one of the big contrasts in this chamber. We on this side supporting higher wages and lower taxes, those on that side arguing for lower wages and higher income taxes. This comes on top of the cuts to income taxes, where we changed stage 3 to make sure that low-income earners actually got a tax cut. It comes on top of the not one, not two, but 3 increases in the minimum wage and award wages, a 3.5% increase for award wages on July 1. Real wages have now grown for 18 months in a row. At the same time, more than 1.1 million jobs have been created. The gender pay gap is the lowest on record, and we have delivered substantial pay increases for workers in feminised industries such as aged care and childcare. Now, the Coalition, of course, we don't know what their position will be when it comes to penalty rates. We know that they tried to ban working from home. We know they wanted to sack 40,000 public servants. And we know that they oppose the right to disconnect and same job, same pay. They said our IR reforms would take us back to the dark ages. Well, what they've done is lead to an increase in wages, which has made a real benefit for working people, including the fine workers who elected the member for Bonner to take her place here in this chamber.
Give a call to the honourable member for Indi.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Defence Minister. Analysis released by the Centre for Public Integrity shows there's been an alarming deterioration in transparency under the Labor government. There is a lack of transparency around Australian manufacture of weapons, weapons parts and trade with Israel. This makes it difficult to understand whether Australia is complicit in breaches of international humanitarian law in Palestine. Minister, can you guarantee Australia is not complicit in war crimes in Gaza?
Order. Call to the Defence Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister.
Well, I thank the member for her question, and I deeply respect the role that she plays in this House. And in answer to the specific question that she has asked me, I can absolutely guarantee that Australia is not complicit in the way in which you've described. But I can also say that Australia is not making weapons in this country and supplying them to Israel. Now, we have made that clear on multiple occasions. I also reject the proposition that we are not transparent in the way in which all of this is reported. I think we have been incredibly transparent in terms of the way in which we engage in all of our controlled exports around the world and the role that our defence industry plays around the world. We are not making weapons for Israel. It is as clear as that. And we have not been doing so since the conflict began on October 7, but we were not doing it for years prior to that. We are not making weapons for Israel. But the point I'd want to make is that we have seen various actors seek to manipulate various information that they have derived, which is in fact not evidence of any of that, try to misconstrue this, try and put out misinformation which goes to suggest the opposite. Now, I want to make the point that to put that misinformation into the public domain does not help one single person in Gaza. It just doesn't. But what it does do is raise tensions in this country, which is deeply destabilising for Australia's social cohesion. I mean, those who walk down that path really need to think about what they are doing for their own self-publicity. This is a matter which is of deep concern to us here in terms of Australia's social cohesion. I reiterate the point that we are not making weapons for Israel, we are not exporting there, but it is really important that every member of this House owns the responsibility that they have to make sure that misinformation is not what characterises the debate in this country.
Give a call to the honourable member for Ford.
My question is to the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government boosting wages and helping with the cost of living while managing the budget in a responsible way?
Call to the Treasurer.
Speaker, I thank the member for Ford for his question, but I also congratulate him on a terrific first speech earlier today. He did his family, his party and our local community proud today, either side of Logan Lee Road, which we've just funded an upgrade for, Mr Speaker. Well done. Now, the member for Ford joins the government with two defining features, Mr Speaker, a big focus on wages and the cost of living and a big, inseparable focus as well on responsible economic management. More Australians working, earning more, keeping more, retiring with more. This is our Labor government's reason for being. That's what today's legislation to protect penalty rates and overtime was all about. It's why we're cutting income taxes 3 times. It's why we're increasing minimum and award wages. It's why we're increasing the super guarantee and paying it on paid parental leave. And it's why we're rolling out more cost of living help this month. We have made room in tight budgets for the help that Australians need and deserve. And that's because we've managed the budget in a responsible way. This has meant the biggest nominal improvement in a budget in a single parliamentary term ever, Mr Speaker. We've found $100 billion in savings. We've banked most of the upside revisions to revenue. We've got the Liberal debt down by $170 billion lower than what we inherited. We're saving on interest costs. We've turned 2 big Liberal deficits into 2 substantial Labor surpluses, Mr Speaker. And the latest advice, Mr Speaker, is that when the final budget outcome comes out in September, it will show that the deficit for the year just finished is much smaller as well. I inform the House that the 24-25 deficit is now expected to be in the low double digits, Mr Speaker. That is less than half what we expected at budget time, and it's around a quarter of what we inherited from those opposite. This is another demonstration of our responsible economic management. Inflation is down, real wages are up, unemployment is low, Interest rates are coming down. We've delivered a couple of surpluses, and debt has come down as well, Mr Speaker. Now, we've made a lot of progress together as Australians. We've got a big agenda to deliver as a government, but we also know that there is more work to do because people are still under pressure. The global environment is very uncertain, and we've got some big, long-standing structural issues in our economy to deal with as well. We're upfront about that. Now, we believe as a government that the best way to build on the progress we've made together to make our economy and our budget more productive, resilient and sustainable over time is to go about that in the same consultative, methodical and especially responsible way that has been a hallmark of our government.
Give the call to the honourable member for Hume.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. I refer to the Prime Minister's answer yesterday when he said the circumnavigation of Australia by Chinese Communist Party warships needed to be viewed in the context that Australia participates in the South China Sea. Is the Prime Minister seriously suggesting, because Australia engages with allies in the South China Sea, that the Chinese Communist Party is free to conduct live-fire exercises without warnings off the south coast of New South Wales?
Give the call to the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for Defence. Order. Before the Deputy Prime... Order. The member for Forest will cease interjecting. The Deputy Prime Minister hasn't begun speaking. You're new to this place. Trust me, you do not want to interject before a minister speaks. It goes for both sides, during questions and before answers. The Deputy Prime Minister has the call.
Well, it has been an interesting start for the Shadow Minister to his new portfolio. It is a place where words matter, where much is read from little, and we have seen the Shadow Minister all over the place in terms of the way in which he is describing events internationally, and more to the point, the way in which he's asking, I should say, questions in this place. But the shadow portfolio that he holds, the portfolio that I hold, comes with an enormous amount of responsibility for the national interest, and pursuing whatever interest he might have within the Liberal Party in terms of that chair should not be done at the expense of the national interest.
Order. The Deputy Prime Minister is going to pause. I want to hear from the Manager of Opposition Business.
Yeah, thank you, Speaker. On direct relevance, I think the Minister was surprised to get this question from the Prime Minister, but the question pertains to the remarks in the House yesterday made by the Prime Minister, directly quoted, and asked about his conversation. So we asked the Minister.
Order. The member for Boothby is warned. Any member is entitled to raise a point of order. That has now occurred. The manager in particular has the right to do that as the leader of the opposition business, manager of opposition business. The Prime Minister has had, Deputy Prime Minister has had a preamble, and we need to get to the question he was asked. He wasn't asked about the Shadow Minister. He was asked about statements by the Prime Minister, so it was a narrow question, and the Deputy Prime Minister will need to be directly relevant to what he was asked.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I've always understood that the maintenance and support of the global rules-based order has been a matter of bipartisanship between the parties of government in this country. I mean, it underpins our national interest as a global trading nation which relies on things such as the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, freedom of navigation on the high seas in international waters, as being the basis upon which this country does its exports, imports, the basis upon so much of the prosperity of our nation, so much of our national income. Now, it's by virtue of that that the Royal Australian Navy does so much of its work in the South China Sea and the East China Sea to assert freedom of navigation, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, on the high seas, so that those trade routes, which are fundamental to— I'm answering the question.
Member for Hume has asked his question.
So that those trade routes, which are fundamental to Australia's national interests, are being maintained. Now, there is no one, and I'd be amazed if the opposition is actually suggesting this, who are asserting that the task group that came around Australia and in the vicinity of Australia earlier in the year were anywhere else other than in international waters. That is where they were. Now, if the Shadow Minister is suggesting that that must not occur again, I want to understand what standard is being promoted by those over there which would apply to Royal Australian Navy vessels when they are in the South China Sea and the East China Sea. I mean, this is exact.
Member for Goldstein. The House is going to come to order so the Deputy Prime Minister can be heard.
The implication of the Shadow Minister's question yesterday and the implication of the Shadow Minister's question today is that those opposite do not support what is understood everywhere as the rights of all nations in respect of the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and freedom of navigation. And so what are you saying about what the Royal Australian Navy should be able to do in the South China Sea and the East China Sea?
Order. The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Barton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Skills and Training. How is the Albanese Labor government helping apprentices and TAFE students with the cost of living?
Give the call to the Minister for Skills and Training.
Thank you, Speaker. And I thank my friend, the member for Barton, for her question. I congratulate her on a really excellent first speech, the start of many great contributions for her community and in the national interest. And it was also fantastic to join her just a few weeks ago at the St George Kogarah TAFE. We met there with some free TAFE students studying aged care and nursing, including some nursing students benefiting from our government's paid prac that began on the 1st of July. Free TAFE and paid prac. Just two examples of how the Albanese Labor government is delivering for Australians and for young Australians in particular, supporting them to get skills they want for the jobs that we need done, and supporting them to get ahead with real cost of living relief as well. Because we know that for vet students and apprentices, just like students at university, cutting student debt will make a real difference, including for those students that the Prime Minister, the Minister for Education and I met with yesterday from CIT here in Canberra. Like Jennifer, who has both a HECS debt and vet debt. Jennifer will save $8,000, which will help set her up for her new career. Or Ralph, a diploma of nursing student, who will save $3,000 because of our student debt relief, which will help him save and prepare to pursue further study to become a registered nurse, like a couple of my colleagues in this place here. Now, these are just some of the thousands of stories, Speaker, that we've heard since we announced our 20% cut from student debt. Now, Speaker, 3 million Australians will benefit from this, including the better part of 300,000 apprentices and TAFE students, because in the Albanese government we are supporting every student and every apprentice to gain new skills, to pursue new opportunities and to secure good jobs. And to that end, Speaker, free TAFE has now seen more than 650,000 enrolments and already 170,000 completions. But we know, Speaker, that not everyone in this place supports free TAFE. Not everyone does. The Liberals and the Nationals too, they voted no to free TAFE. And the Leader of the Opposition said in this place that if you don't pay for something, you don't value it. Well, Australians disagree. And the Albanese Labor government has been listening to students like Jennifer and like Ralph, who told us that cutting student debt would make a difference in their lives. They put that on the ballot paper, and on the 3rd of May, young people voted for this. Now we are delivering. We're getting on with delivering student debt relief and with it more opportunities for young people to get skills they want for jobs we need.
The Minister's time has concluded, and I give the call to the Leader of the Nationals.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture. Can the minister confirm whether Australia's biosecurity requirements from today's announcement to import US beef will be at least to the equivalent to the biosecurity requirements that Australian beef must meet to be imported into the US?
Call to the Minister for Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the Leader of the Nationals for that question. I would say to the Leader of the Nationals that this decision has been made by my department, and it is through the usual processes that these decisions are made. As he would be well aware, of course, this has been an ongoing process now for over a decade in terms to US beef coming into Australia, and indeed US beef has been able to come into Australia since 2019, and in 2020 they asked for expanded access to allow some of the other beef from the supply chain that is slaughtered in the US to come from Canada and Mexico. And I would say to the member opposite that this has been done in the usual way. The department has published the review on the website today in the usual way. The import details that are required for importers will be published on the website and provided on Monday in the usual way. And as the member opposite would know, the protocols in relation to the areas that he is suggesting have actually already been provided to his office today on his email, can I say? And so the member opposite needs to be very careful here about trying to undermine Australia's biosecurity system. Our biosecurity system is the strongest in the world for a good reason. We've had to invest around $2 billion to strengthen our biosecurity system because of the mess that you left it in. So you should not be undermining our scientific approach to this.
The minister will pause. I can't hear anything she's saying. Just want to be very clear with everyone. The minister was asked about protocols. She's explaining exactly to the House the question she was asked in detail about what a department's doing, when they're being published. I don't know why this is so controversial, but she's being directly relevant, and I just want to make sure I can hear, and I haven't finished, so you can just take a moment. So I want the minister to be heard because I need to hear what she's saying, so in case someone does take a point of order and they want to then make a decision about what she's saying, I've got to hear that. And I think other members in the House want to hear that as well. Now the manager on a point of order. Oh, the minister's concluded. Okay. We're going to keep moving. Give the call to the member for Maribyrnong.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its election commitment to help families save on their energy bills? And is the government being asked to consider other policies?
Great question. Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I thank my honourable friend for her question. I enjoyed campaigning with her in the beautiful suburb of Travancore, where we were campaigning on cheaper home batteries, Mr Speaker. And the honourable member asked me how we're delivering, and we're delivering on the cheaper home batteries policy that she and I and everyone on this side of the House sought a mandate to deliver. And yesterday I told the House that just over 11,000 households across the country had installed batteries under the cheaper home batteries policy. It's moving so fast I need to provide a daily update to the House. Today I can say 12,226 households across Australia have installed batteries under the cheaper home batteries policy. We know that if you already have solar panels, you can cut your bills by over $1,000. And if you install solar panels and batteries together, that can cut your bills by $2,300 a year for a typical family, which, of course, is 90% of the bill for an average typical family as well. So this is a good thing, Mr Speaker. Now, the honourable member asked me if we are being asked to consider any alternatives, and indeed the whole House is being asked to consider alternatives. In fact, next week the member for New England is going to introduce his anti-net zero bill on behalf of the coalition. Now, I received a copy of the bill yesterday through unusual channels. They're leaking like a sieve over there, Mr Speaker. But I received a copy of the bill, and it's the Repeal Net Zero Bill 2025, fair enough. But when you look at it, it actually goes a lot further than that. Mr Speaker, the House will be interested to know what they're going to be asked to vote on by the coalition. Schedule 1, Amendments, Part 1, repeal the Carbon Credits Carbon Farming Initiative Act 2011. So all those farmers across Australia who are getting income from carbon credits and carbon farms, that all stops. The moment this bill stops, farmers' income stops. Repeal the Climate Change Act 2022. I guess we expected that one. Repeal the Future Made in Australia Guarantee of Origin Act. Well, you wouldn't want things made in Australia, Mr Speaker, would you? I mean, that would be a terrible thing. repeal the National Greenhouse and Energy Reporting Act 2007. So not only does the coalition not want us to reduce emissions, they want to stop measuring them. Repeal the Net Zero Economy Authority Act. That's the organisation which creates jobs in the region, so they're against that. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker, Mr Speaker. Repeal the Renewable Energy Electricity Act 2000. Now, the hint's in the year. That was introduced by the woke warrior, John Howard, Mr Speaker. You know, he goes around art galleries throwing painted pictures, does John Howard. That's how extreme he is. That is the act which has supported solar panels and now batteries across Australia. That's the act under which I signed the regulation for cheaper home batteries. So if that act goes, all the support for solar panels goes, all the cheaper home batteries goes out the door. The Leader of the Nationals during the election campaign promised that they'd do something about batteries, said it was really important to do household batteries. They never actually did, but at least, Mr Speaker, he was in the zone, he had the vibe. We're delivering a policy. Their policy is net zero climate action.
Has concluded. The member for McNamara is warned. The call to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Treasurer. Does the Treasurer know which of his colleagues told the Australian newspaper, quote, "I hate the principle of taxing unrealised capital gains," as reported on today's front page? And given so many in the Labor movement, including Paul Keating, have similar concerns, how does the Treasurer justify taxing Australians on money they have never actually received?
I've got some problems with that. No, the way the question was framed. I don't have problems with the question. I've got the way it was framed, but I'll hear from the Leader of the House.
Speaker, given that the standing orders and practice are clear about not responding to unnamed individuals, I'm not sure what you do with a question that actually says I'm referring to an unnamed individual.
Order. I think we can get through this pretty easily, and I'll hear from the manager.
Look, the Leader of the House is correct. We don't know which one of the colleagues has made this statement. That's why
resume your seat. Just to assist order, members on my right will cease interjecting. The Leader of the House is correct. I'm going to rely on the fact that it was a media report, and you're referring to the media report, that the Treasurer and certainly the end part of the question was in order. But just to remind members, if they can refer to a media report or someone's comments directly rather than the way that was phrased. The Treasurer has the call. The member for Wright will leave the chamber under 94A. Order. No. I just want to remind members, question time is an important part of our democracy, and of course the question is important, so is the answer. They're equally as important as each other, and we cannot have people making comments before, certainly, hopefully not during, the answer as well. The Treasurer has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Nobody knew he was on the front bench until you asked him to leave it.
What's he got?
Mr Speaker.
Order. Just the Treasurer is now going to get to the answer.
Mr Speaker, it is a strange day to get a question like that, given those opposite are in a total nuclear meltdown over net zero policy, as the Energy Minister just ran through. It's a strange person to choose to ask the question, given his role in that nuclear meltdown. And the timing is strange too, Mr Speaker, given they've just been towed up by the Energy Minister on disunity on their side of the House, Mr Speaker. So let me tell you, Mr Speaker, what every single person on this side of the House believes, and that is in the fundamental importance of superannuation. And that's why this side of the House has played an enthusiastic role in taking superannuation from 11.5% to 12% when it comes to the superannuation guarantee. We won't be taking lectures on superannuation from those who always try to diminish and undermine and vandalise super at every turn. From John Howard on, Mr Speaker, they've always opposed superannuation. They've always tried to undermine it. They've always tried to take the compulsory out of compulsory superannuation. Every member on this side of the House takes a different view to the view taken on that side of the House, Mr Speaker. Now, we believe in compulsory superannuation because it's all about making sure when people earn more and keep more, they can retire with more as well. That's our motivation when it comes to superannuation. Now, part of our responsibility when it comes to superannuation is to make sure that there are generous concessional treatments for people putting money in super, and they will continue. Even after the proposal that we made, the change that we proposed almost, I think, around 2.5 years ago now, the treatment of super will still be concessional. The concessions will still be generous. We take our responsibilities to the system very seriously, and that includes making sure—
The Deputy Leader of the Opposition—
That's what I'm trying to do, if you listen.
Deputy Leader of the Opposition is going to assist for your answer that you've asked, if you could let the Treasurer be heard.
Yeah.
Yes, the call.
The reason these changes are so important is because we need to make sure that the generous concessional treatment for super is sustainable. And that's why we announced this change 2.5 years ago. There's been an election between then and now. There are good reasons to make the concessions more sustainable. We need to make the budget more sustainable as well, Mr Speaker, and this is a part of that effort. Now, I note this as well, Mr Speaker. Thank you.
The Treasurer's time is concluded. I give the call to the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitment to strengthen paid parental leave? Were these changes guaranteed?
Call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker. And I want to thank the member for Moreton for her question and congratulate her on an absolute corker of a first speech and say how lovely it was to have little Margaret visiting Mummy at work today. July the 1st saw a number of terrific changes for Australian families, and one of the best is the expansion of paid parental leave. Before the Rudd and Gillard governments, Australia was one of very few developed nations that didn't have a paid parental leave scheme. Labor started paid parental leave and Labor has expanded it. Under this Prime Minister and with the work of Minister Rishworth, Australians are now receiving about $12,000 more in paid parental leave since 2022. And that's because they're getting more time, an extra 2 weeks entitlement this year and another 2 weeks extra next year. They're getting more money with higher payments, around $200 a week more, and of course superannuation for the first time on paid parental leave, meaning that they'll be about $4,500 better off in retirement because of that payment. There's more flexibility, with parents able to take more time off together, and more people eligible, with thresholds increasing. So more time, more money, more flexibility and more people eligible. And of course, when mums and dads go back to work, cheaper childcare will leave families thousands of dollars a year better off as well. The member for Banks introduced the Prime Minister and I to a lovely family in East Hills, Steph, Julia and baby Artie, and they told us what a huge difference the extra support makes. But they are just one of 180,000 families that benefit every year from these changes. But of course this was at risk during the election in May. The Liberals' costings show that they would have cut paid parental leave. And of course it was the member for Goldstein that said, "To me, paid parental leave is a very bad scheme and I make no ambiguity about it." Oh no, it gets better. He says, "It's not my choice that women have children, it's genetic." Well, I say to the member for Goldstein, thank goodness women do have children, and thank goodness that families pour their love and their labour into our kids. Children are the best gift to any parent, and we want new families to be able to spend those precious first days together with less financial pressure. The Albanese government is getting on with the job, delivering our election commitments and taking pressure off Australian families.
The call to the honourable member for Clark.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Minister, I've now met many allied health professionals who are concerned that the recently reviewed NDIS pricing structure, including cuts to travel and remote area rates, risks the supply of essential services in rural, regional and remote markets like Tasmania. Minister, will you pause these changes and properly consult with all concerned to ensure price settings are affordable for NDIS clients and sustainable for allied health professionals?
Give a call to the Minister for Health and Aged Care, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. Can I say at the outset what an enormous honour it is to have been appointed as the Minister for Disability and the NDIS. On this side of the parliament, we take great pride in the establishment of this scheme. It is one of the great social reforms of our age, one supported by the now opposition, but one I remember also strongly supported by the member for Clark in that term of parliament after 2010. We're very proud of it, but we're also committed to making sure we get it back on track, that we ensure that it's sustainable for the future, particularly in the interests of people living with a disability, because I think everyone in this parliament knows that the growth rate that we inherited when we came to government of about 22% per year was simply unsustainable. And one tool in that NDIS reform toolbox is pricing reform, introducing more robust pricing arrangements than I think anyone in this place would accept that we've had up until now. Now, the member asks me about the pricing determination that's been made by the independent NDIA board taking effect this month. It follows undoubtedly the most comprehensive review of NDIS prices that has been conducted in the scheme's history, a review that covered 10 million data points and had, to the member's question, very significant consultation behind it. The principal objective, of course, is to ensure that every participant gets the best possible value for money for their plan, that they're not paying above the odds for any of the supports and services that they get. I stress this was an independent decision of an independent board, but it is one I support. It's a decision I support. Now, to address the member's questions, a couple of points. Tasmanian prices, many therapy supports were getting paid significantly more than the same therapies being delivered in Sydney and Melbourne. $30 an hour more for physiotherapy, about $20 an hour more for psychology, a temporary arrangement intended to develop a market in jurisdictions like Tasmania. That market is now mature, and it's proper that those prices return to the national level. I also make the point that rates across the board for therapy are still higher than pretty much any other system you could look at. Health, veterans care, Comcare, things like that. And even with some of the reductions put in place this month, they are still substantially higher. There are still remote loadings that would apply to areas in Tasmania like Swansea and Queenstown, which will attract a 40% loading, King Island a 50% loading, and the very generous travel arrangements for NDIS providers that apply to pretty much no other scheme in the country are being made slightly less generous, but are still much better than any of those other schemes that I just mentioned attract as well.
Give a call to the honourable member for Cornwall.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its promise to repair the aged care sector and deliver dignity to every older Australian?
Call to the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd firstly like to congratulate my friend, the member for Cornwall, on his glorious election and thank him for his question about the Albanese government's generational reforms to aged care. I recently had the great pleasure of visiting the Ottoman Village Aged Care Facility in the member for Cornwall's electorate. Aged care homes, like Ottoman Village, play such an important role in helping older Australians from diverse backgrounds stay connected to their culture, their language and their community. And it was a pleasure to witness firsthand the warmth of care that residents receive there on a daily basis. Speaker, we're putting older Australians at the very centre of their care, building a high-quality, dignified and sustainable system for people in residential aged care, for people getting support at home, and for every older person and their loved ones. We've shown in our first term that we are determined to fix the aged care crisis, and we will see it through. I acknowledge the extraordinary work of my predecessor, the Minister for Communications, for passing the new Aged Care Act through the Parliament and for kick-starting our ambitious program of reform work across the aged care system. Speaker, today the government introduced legislation that will pave the way for a smooth transition to the new Aged Care Act. The latest step will help prepare older Australians and their loved ones, aged care providers and workers for the Act's historic changes. This legislation continues our work and delivers 58 of the recommendations of the Royal Commission to create a safer and fairer system that puts older Australians at the centre of their care. But, Mr Speaker, the work to rebuild our aged care system is already well underway. In our first term, we mandated 24/7 nursing, delivering more care minutes for older Australians. There's now a registered nurse on site in residential aged care homes more than 99% of the time. And every single day, we're delivering an additional 6.8 million minutes of care to older Australians. But our aged care sector would be nothing without the dedicated, passionate workers who care for the people that we love. Our government has invested $17.7 billion to increase the wages of those workers. Under Labor, registered nurses on the award working in the aged care sector are $430 a week better off. Enrolled nurses are $370 a week better off, and personal care workers are $320 a week better off. But most importantly, Speaker, we've improved the standard of care. We are giving, through that, every Australian the dignified care that they very much deserve. In 2022, only 38% of aged care homes had an overall star rating of 4 or 5 stars. Today, 3/4 of residential aged care homes have that rating of 4 or 5 stars. We've got a big job ahead of us, but we owe it to every single Australian to be ambitious as we deliver these once-in-a-generation reforms.
Call to the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Assistant Treasurer. On the 19th of May this year, the Assistant Treasurer said, and I quote, around 10% of taxpayers will be hit by Labor's unfair super tax. Can the Assistant Treasurer confirm to the House that his publicly announced 10% figure will mean at least 1.2 million Australians will be impacted by Labor's super tax?
Give the call to the Assistant Treasurer and Minister for Financial Services.
Thank you for the question. Can I state that this is a policy, as I stated yesterday on a number of occasions, that is well designed, that applies to around 0.5% of members' funds, and that applies to funds that are $3 million or larger, that are funds significantly larger than is required for somebody to have dignity in retirement. And can I also reiterate that this treatment, that this policy will see concessional treatment for the entirety of those funds. The member asked a question about the number of people who will be affected by this policy. What I can say is that if we look at our tax system, thresholds across our tax system are not indexed. And if we look at a particular policy that was put forward by those opposite, a change to the Division 293 part of our tax system, where those opposite, when they were in government, lowered the threshold at which concessional treatment was made less concessional from $300,000 to $250,000. That was a policy brought forward by those. They did not index the $250,000 threshold.
Just the Assistant Treasurer can pause. The Manager of Business on a point of order.
Speaker, Division 293, the Minister knows, is not relevant to the question. The question was about a public statement that he made about a 10% figure that he made about this policy. So we ask him about this policy in his own figure. We're quoting him. We're quoting you on this.
The Manager is correct. The Assistant Treasurer wasn't asked about any other policy topic. He can do some compare and contrast, but he simply just can't launch into what has happened in the past. That wasn't part of the question. The Leader of the Opposition, I am trying to uphold what the manager has said, so I assume we want to move forward. So if you could assist by ceasing interjecting. I'm just going to make sure that the Assistant Treasurer is directly relevant to the. He can talk about the tax. He can talk about the new arrangement. Sorry, but he can't talk about the opposition because he wasn't asked about the opposition. The Assistant Treasurer has the call.
Thank you, Speaker. And the point that I'm making, Speaker, is that what's underpinning this question is an assumption that a particular threshold will not change for 30 years. It is an assumption that a particular threshold will not change for 30 years. And the point that I'm making, Mr Speaker, is that there are a range of thresholds in our tax system, and that what we see in our tax system is that thresholds are reviewed from time to time, and that there was a threshold in the superannuation system that was introduced by those opposite that was not indexed. So that is the connection to the point that is being made by the question that is raised by those opposite. I reiterate, this is a policy that affects 0.5% of policies, and it is a fair and modest measure.
Order. The Deputy Leader, the Deputy Leader and the Treasurer are just. Deputy Leader, you know that is not an appropriate way when I'm about to call another member who's on her feet. Come on. You're now warned for that sort of behaviour. We simply can't have people just going for each other across the chamber. It's not going to happen this term. It's not going to work that way. Being very clear with everyone. I'd like to hear from the honourable member for Bullwinkle.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. How is the Albanese Labor government unlocking more opportunities for our agriculture sector and supporting Australian jobs through strengthening trade relationships?
Give the call to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry.
Thanks, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the first ever member for Bullwinkle for that terrific question. I also note in her first speech, which was terrific this morning, she also referred to her support for farmers in her community and how important the farming community is to her. Mr Speaker, I think what it shows is our government has worked incredibly hard with our trading relationships and our international partners. We've been restoring our place in the world without compromising on getting good outcomes for our Aussie farmers. Indeed, we've worked very hard to diversify trade and to unlock new opportunities for Aussie farmers. This has supported $73.5 billion in high-quality agriculture product exports to more than 190 countries in 2024 alone. 190 countries, Mr Speaker. And this is what can be achieved when you don't walk away from the table, when you put the need for positive outcomes of our agriculture sector at the forefront of trade negotiations. Indeed, Mr Speaker, we've worked very hard, particularly to restore trade with China, resuming over $20 billion worth of trade for our lobster, our wine, our barley, our coal, our cotton, our timber logs, oat and hay, copper ores, concentrates and our red meat exports, Mr Speaker. And in just the last week, of course, during the Prime Minister's visit to China, Australia finalised new agricultural market access between the two countries, the first since 2017, and we're now providing apple growers from across mainland Australia with access to the Chinese market, building on the apple exports already taking place from my home state of Tasmania, Mr Speaker. This builds on the over 230 agricultural market access achievements by our government since we came to office, including 29 new markets that we have opened. These agreements are supporting our agricultural industry to grow towards a $100 billion sector by 2030, Mr Speaker. And as part of our work to support our farmers and our primary producers to seize these opportunities and new markets. Indeed, with 1 in 4 Australian jobs supported by our trade, the Albanese Labor government is ensuring growth in trade unlocks more regional jobs, Mr Speaker, and delivers more economic benefits, particularly in our regional communities where a lot of this is produced. We're continuing to repair the damage of the last decade without compromising on getting good outcomes for Aussie farmers. We want good Australian jobs from these, and we want to support our agriculture sector. That's because, of course, our government has a proud record of delivering better trade outcomes for our farmers, Mr Speaker, because we know that they make the very best produce across the globe, and our farmers are supporting them to back better outcomes for our national economy.
Time has concluded. Give the call to the honourable member for Fowler.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Congratulations, first of all, to your election to speakership, and also to the Prime Minister and your government for a strong result in May, and the red wave certainly rolled through. My question is to the Prime Minister. Your government says all public schools are on the path to full and fair funding and that no one will be left behind. In Fowler, Bonerick High has over 40 demountables and almost double the students it was built for. With 2,000 new homes under construction nearby in Newleaf, the local PNC have asked me about why their Commonwealth infrastructure funding was rejected. What federal funding will the Labor government commit to fixing critical infrastructure in disadvantaged schools like Bonerick?
Great question.
Call to the Prime Minister.
I might ask the member, and I thank the member for Fowler for her question of whether it's a public school or if that's okay.
Just for a point of clarification, I understand it was Bonerick Public.
Bonerick High School, public school.
Public school. I thank the member.
I thank the member for her question, and I'll make 2 points. One is that the funding of infrastructure in public schools is conducted by state governments. What we have done through the reforms and the agreement that I signed with the New South Wales Premier, Chris Minns, is to provide an additional $4.8 billion for New South Wales public schools. What that will do as part of the programs right across the country is to take the Gonski formula, school resourcing standard that was determined in 2012, so that every single student, whether they go to a private school or a public school, will get the funding that they need and deserve. In particular, in disadvantaged communities will be the big winners, because what will occur is that funding of that additional $4.8 billion overwhelmingly will go towards disadvantaged communities and towards schools where students might need the additional dollars for additional tutoring, for smaller class sizes, for one-on-one education or in small groups. It also will provide for additional resources in terms of teaching. Part of the deal is that not just funding for students, but in addition, the state governments have agreed, including New South Wales, to lift standards. So a real concentration on numeracy, literacy, on those basics, which will be so important going forward. We are really proud of the reforms that we have put in place. Capital funding remains for public schools, the domain of state and territory governments. We do provide, it's the Commonwealth, we provide funding for private schools, but what this is really doing is making sure that every parent can have the confidence that their child will get the support that they need, including in the electorate of Fowler.
The call to the honourable member for Bean.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government building on its record of easing cost of living pressures for Australian households and families?
Call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Bean for his question. And on July 1, of course, we had the increase of 3.5% in wages. We had paid parental leave, an additional 2 weeks, and superannuation paid for the first time on paid parental leave. Importantly, we had the $10,000 incentives kick in for apprentices to do construction, following on what we'd already done with the new energy apprenticeships. We had paid prac for teachers, for nurses, for people doing social work degrees as well. We had the subsidies for batteries so that solar panels can store the energy in order to also place pressure off the grid, but importantly, they will reduce household energy bills already. For 11,000 households have taken it up. And this week we have delivered on critical commitments that we've made. Cutting student debt by 20%, benefiting 3 million Australians by an average of $5,500 each. We have introduced today the legislation to protect penalty rates for 2.6 million workers, making an enormous difference. And importantly, something that perhaps when people leave here tonight they can have a shout, freezing the draft beer excise was introduced today. An extremely popular measure, I might say, Mr Speaker, including in the electorate of Oxley, I'm sure that people will have a cheer for that. We are focused on the Australian people. We're focused on delivering the policies we took to the election to make Australians' lives better. And meanwhile, those opposite have been focused on themselves, more divided and chaotic than ever. We had the member for Hume being focused on foreign policy on the fly, sabre-rattling. You know, yesterday we were too pro-China with the questions. Today we're too pro-America, apparently, with the changes that have come in. And now, of course, we've seen the National Party. You know, I'm surprised they've taken a break from the Sky News studio, Mr Speaker, because 16 interviews in the last 24 hours, 16, back-to-back, the Nats talking about themselves, Mr Speaker. The Nats talking about themselves non-stop, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, we'll continue to be focused on the needs of Australians. They'll continue to be focused on themselves. And on that note, Mr Speaker, after a request from those opposite, speak to your leader.
The member for Page, resume your seat. Order.
He shut you down. I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.